Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to take you step by step on what you need to do to start your novel. My daughter is a brand new writer. She has never written anything other than little short stories and poems, and she had a bunch of ideas for new novels that she wanted to start tackling, and she didn't know where to start, so I took her step by step. So I hope this is helpful to you. So let's get into the video, you guys. Okay, so this is the way I recommend you start. If you've never done this before like her, I wanted to make it really basic. I wanted her to start right from the start. So I wanted her to flush out all her ideas. So this is what we're doing here. She's telling me all her ideas. She had 4 book ideas, and I wanted her to really explain them out loud to see how far she had gotten in her ideas. And then what I did was ask her the following questions. So, which one are you most passionate about? Which story do you want to tell right now? Do you have the ending for any of these stories? So when I was able to ask her these questions for each story, she was able to narrow down which book she wanted to write. So then once she had that, we moved on to the next step. So the next thing I needed her to understand is who her audience is. So who are you writing this book for? Is it middle grade, YA, or adult? Once she had that, we moved on to the next question. Which point of view are you going to be telling the story? First or third? Once she had that, we moved on to the next. What is your genre? Fiction. Obviously, it wasn't nonfiction, so we knew it was fiction. But then what is your subgenre? You know, we had to get down to the nitty-gritty of what it is going to be, and hers is going to be contemporary romance. So once she had that, she was able to understand her story and how she's going to tell it. So those are all very important things that you need to know right from the start. You have to know who your audience is, because you know your topic that you're going to be discussing in your story has to make sense to the reader. You need to know which point of view you're going to be writing in, and you obviously need to understand your genre and your subgenre. And what we're doing right here is we're trying to understand the subgenre, because they're not all the same, and we just wanted to make sure that contemporary fiction was the right one for, contemporary romance was the right fiction that she's writing, and in fact it is right. The next thing I did is take her down the outlining process. I made her understand that outlining is not so difficult, and it is there to help you and make your story go, easily. And basically, she already had in her mind the outline done, because she knew exactly how her story was going to go. She knew what the hook was. She knew what the inciting incident was. She knew what her climax was. And she knows the ending. She knows how she wants it to end. So these are all very important parts in the outlining process. And now, once she fills those in, now she has a place from which to start her story, and she can always refer back to her outline and just fill in. I told her there's no stress here. You don't have to complete, you don't have to make it, you don't have to write 2 different stories. You don't have to go back and forth between your outline and your story and make sure that you're filling in the blanks. No, the outline is there just as a guide. Sometimes you get stuck in the middle of your story, but if you have suggestions, for example, between the inciting incident and the rising action, you know that there's things that need to happen. And if you write little things, like little clues, like they met at the bar, they met at the park, whatever it is, then you can create a story from just those sentences. So basically what I'm doing here is just teaching her the outlining process and how beneficial it can be for her. I also wanted to show her a different way of outlining. She could do it on her computer. She can do it on her, a notebook like she has there, or she could do it on the board like I'm doing here. You can have little stickies, and like the top one, as you can see on the wall, that says the first act. So basically what I'm telling her to do here is, you know, write all your things that need to happen in the first act. With a different color sticky, you write the following. You write the exposition, the hook, the build-up, and the first plot point. And you separate it. And then in between, you start filling in all the things that need to happen. For example, before the hook, something needs to happen, so you write it on the sticky. Before the build-up, there's a bunch of things that need to happen, write it on your sticky, and then you can move things around and make it to where, you know, you're not so rigid as if you write it on a notebook, let's say. So this just helps you see it on a bigger format and lets you play with it, and it makes it easy for you to just move it around and see it at a glance. The next thing I wanted her to understand before we got into characters, because the next thing is building character, is understanding your character as far as their motive and the conflict. You have to know what your character's motive is, because they will change throughout your novel. So who they are at the beginning of the novel will not be who they are at the end. But the motive, their whole reasoning for doing what they do, you have to be very clear on it, because that's what's going to drive your story. Additionally, it helps you create conflict and resolution throughout the entire story, throughout each scene. You know, when you create a conflict, you have to be able to solve it, but then you have to be aware that just around the corner, there's got to be another conflict, because that's ultimately how you move the story forward. So what I was doing here was I pulled out my own index cards from my novel Between Us, and I was giving her examples of how my character's motives and her conflict drove the entire story. She's already read it, she knows, so I was able to explain it to her in that way. And finally, I'm teaching her just a little bit about character development and creating character profiles. The simple stuff that we always know is how, you know, what did they look like, how tall, what color hair do they have, their ethnicity. But I also wanted her to understand that, like I did in my last video, if you notice, I said that sometimes what makes a character memorable is when they have something flawed. So I made her understand that for each character, especially a major character, you give them a good quality and a flawed quality, both physically and emotionally. And what we're doing here is I told her to go to Pinterest and create a mood board, start thinking about your characters, because she's the same as me. She always likes to think of, when she reads a book, she always imagines the actor that would play that. So this was a perfect way for her to create a mood board, and that's what she's doing here. She's going to start it and start picking out actors that, you know, will just inspire her to write her story even better and faster. Yeah, you guys, that's basically it. That's my advice on how to start a novel from the very, very first stages, ideas. You may have a bunch swirling in your head, and I thought this was a good way for my daughter to get started, and I wanted to record it so that it could help you in case this is the very first time you're tackling your very first dream of starting a novel. I want to remind you on your way out to subscribe to this channel. I am here every Sunday and every Thursday with content just like this. And if you like it, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment below letting me know that this was helpful, or if you have any tips for me or for her. Until next time, stay safe.